通往澳洲总理宝座的大门又开始轮流转啦。在支持率低下的澳洲自由党
Yeah, you know it's been a big week in politics when the Taiwanese animators give our MPs their trademark treatment. And what a week it was. Malcolm Turnbull taking back the Liberal leadership from the very man who took it from him 6 years before. The move has proved popular with voters, with the new government already enjoying a bounce in the polls, leaping ahead of Labor for the first time in 16 months. So, to break down an extraordinary week, Education Minister Christopher Pyne and Labor's Anthony Albanese. Good morning to both of you.
Morning, Lisa.
Good to be with you. He'll
Now,
have a new title next week.
Well, we'll wait and see. We'll get to that in just a moment.
Feather duster.
We will start with you, Christopher. Now, the Australian Financial Review was reporting this morning that Tony Abbott was sure he had your support as late as last Sunday night, and as we now know, he didn't. You ended up voting for Malcolm Turnbull. Is that true?
Well, he did have my support on Sunday night because there was no leadership ballot or challenge, in fact, till Monday. I mean, until Julie Bishop went to see Tony Abbott, I was utterly unaware that there would be a challenge. In fact, I said to Tony Abbott on the weekend, I didn't believe there'd be a challenge this week before the Canning by-election.
So who were the key colleagues that Julie Bishop has talked about when she realised that there were enough numbers to ensure that Tony Abbott was no longer going to be leader should a challenge kick off?
Not me.
So you weren't one of them?
No. So if she spoke to colleagues and sought their views, I guess you'd have to ask her that question. But she didn't speak to me to seek my view about that matter.
So clearly 24 hours is a long time in politics. At what time on Monday did Tony Abbott lose your support?
Well, I've tried to make a habit this week of not raking over old coals, and Monday's old coals in politics, amazingly, especially by Friday. But on Monday, when there was obviously going to be a ballot, I made an assessment about what was best for the country. What's best for the country is that Bill Shorten and the union movement are not running the nation again.
But you also made a decision that Tony Abbott wasn't the best for the country.
Well, a decision was made by my colleagues, and I as one of them, that Malcolm Turnbull was the person who could best position the government to win again and keep Labor out of office and deliver good government.
And that all turned around in the space of a few hours.
Well, that's what happens in politics. It's quite fast-moving. And as John Howard said, it's the ruthless arithmetic of the polls. For 2 years, we've been behind in the polls. Now, as Andrew Robb said, it's like the share price. If the share price is trundling along at the bottom after 2 years, questions start getting asked. And Tony Abbott had a warning in February from the party room. 7 months later, things weren't any better. So it was very hard for anyone to argue that he wasn't given absolutely every opportunity to prove that he was the best person to lead the party.
And loyalty clearly doesn't count for much in your game, does it?
Well, it does. I mean, for example, I was Malcolm Turnbull's Manager Opposition Business and Shadow Education Minister. I then transitioned to Tony Abbott. He believed that he would get my support, and he received it for 5 years as Leader of the House and Education Minister. And I hope that I'll stay as Leader of the House under Malcolm Turnbull, because I'm one of those people in politics, not unlike Anthony, that people know where I stand on most issues, and I'm prepared to argue my case. But I don't move around in the shadows and do the job on people. I come from the front, not from the back.
I thought you were a fixer.
On Sunday, well, you can fix from the front. You don't have to fix just from the back.
Really?
Lisa.
So you stab from the front, do you?
Well, the truth is, on Sunday there was no leadership ballot. On Monday there was. Then I made an assessment. I haven't made any secret of that.
Wow, that's a very quick flip. What did Malcolm Turnbull promise you in terms of your support?
You've got to be nimble in politics, Lisa.
Nobody would accuse you of not being nimble.
Agile and nimble.
What has Malcolm Turnbull promised you in return for your support?
Well, he hasn't promised me anything.
So you have no idea what ministry you're going to get?
Well, I know that I'm the Education Minister at the moment.
But you'd like Defence,
I'd like to either keep education or move to a portfolio that he wants for me. But he hasn't promised me anything. I don't need to be promised something to...
In return for your vote?
To support the government. No, I think the best government for Australia is a Liberal government. I don't want to see Bill Shorten and the CFMEU back at the Cabinet table, and that was an assessment that I made on Monday. Now, I would be surprised if I was dropped from the Cabinet, given I think I'm doing a reasonable job in the last few years.
And you did vote for the new Prime Minister.
I think that's unlikely.
It's a matter for him.
OK, to you now, Anthony.
It's unlikely too, but we'll see, I suppose.
Anthony, this change in Prime Minister has spelt disaster for Labor.
Well, Tony Abbott divided the nation, but Malcolm Turnbull has divided the coalition. And we're seeing already everything from young Liberal brawls, quite extraordinary, physically, through to the sort of division that's there and rancour over who voted for whom, over who'll be rewarded. And next Monday, there will be winners and losers. And the losers will, no doubt, continue to undermine Malcolm Turnbull. And Malcolm Turnbull we're seeing fighting with himself. I mean, it's quite extraordinary for a bloke who says he was a conviction politician to turn around and adopt Tony Abbott's policies on climate change, on water, on marriage equality. That's not the actions of a conviction politician. That's the action of someone who's put his own personal ambition before his ambition for the country.
Regardless of all of that, a Galaxy poll out this morning showing Malcolm Turnbull leads Bill Shorten 51-20 as preferred PM. When will you be tapping Bill Shorten on the shoulder?
Now, well, there's always a bounce when there's a new leader. What's
but that's
extraordinary,
a huge bounce.
No,
and
it's not actually.
This is that middle ground that Labor were always nervous about. People who felt like they didn't get a choice. They didn't want Tony Abbott. They didn't want Bill Shorten. They were looking for somebody, and they seem to have found him.
This has actually been a very small bounce. Normally, what you see... Go back and have a look at what happened when Julia Gillard took over in circumstances that I don't think were ideal, just like this week. I think the idea of knocking off a first-term elected Prime Minister is a very big step indeed.
Labor has to be very careful on that, though. After the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd era, you have to be very careful about having a go at anyone else who does that.
I've been pretty consistent, Lisa, as you know. And I think that the circumstances, there are differences. Kevin Rudd certainly was popular at the time that he was deposed, and Tony Abbott certainly has been unpopular.
What sort of bounce do you think you'd get if you were a Labor leader, Anthony?
No, well, that's not going to happen.
Well, tell us about that, because Kevin Rudd, this is our last question, we're just running out of time. Kevin Rudd changed the rules on how Labor leaders are elected from within the party. He changed the rules to the point, is it actually possible to get a new Labor leader before the next election? What would have to happen?
Well, the rules don't matter. What matters is the political conviction of our team, and our team is united. We're determined to put those sort of divisions in the past, and that's why I've been working every day to be a minister in a Shorten Labor government. That's my objective. That's a lot more desirable than being leader of the opposition.
But that conviction will fall away, as we know, heading towards the election. If you don't get those numbers back, you will have to change leaders.
Well, hang on a ticket, Lisa. Those numbers back. You're talking about the worst poll being 49-2 today, immediately after a change of leadership. It doesn't get better than the bounce that you get immediately after a leadership change.
All right, I tell you what, between the two of you, life is never dull politically in this country.
A lot has happened in the last week, I've got to say.
We all need the weekend off.
We're getting a bit old for it too, Anthony, I think.
Really? You think so?
We're not as nimble as we used to.
I don't believe that for a second.
He showed a bit of nimbleness this week.
Well, he turned up this week, so that's an indication that there's been a lot going on. Thanks very much. Hope you have a great weekend.
I think I was right last week, though, in the prediction last Friday.
Oh,
what did you say?
You did.
Said all this was about to be played out.
He brought along
here
his
on the Today
Show. He had a better insight than I did.
Here on the Today Show.
You heard it here first.
That halo was starting to drop above your head, Christopher. Over to you, David.
You should